I gotta wait. How long I gotta wait for a press record?
Go.
Welcome to the share, where Miss Dream always has a story.
I'm Dream, a black woman with many beautiful interconnecting identities. A few I will name at this moment as we get started on this podcast journey together. A Bostonian, born and raised in the inner city, Dorchester and Roxbury neighborhoods, to a teenage single mother who has my whole heart. An educator, I've been working with youth and children since my teenage years, and formally, I have been teaching almost a decade now. That's wild to think about. An entrepreneur, I am the founder of The Chair, a black and brown centered tech platform dedicated to supporting people on their hair journey, where you can design hair boards, connect to hairstylists, and share hair care tips for a more joyous experience. I have a workable site, my prototype. It took me 2 years to build, and now I'm on this adventure that you're currently on with me. My goal for this podcast is to share stories, black stories, educator stories, entrepreneurship stories, and hair stories. I want you to leave each episode with the opportunity to gain new insight, just a glimpse into my world or the worlds that are featured on my podcasts, a little chuckle during your day or night, possibly a little anger to encourage you to advocate for justice, and hope to continue learning and dreaming. So come in and listen to the beautiful voices in the chair as they share their stories, starting with me.
Where we share stories in the chair.
Hello, beautiful people. This is Emily. Emily, can you please introduce yourself?
I would be glad to. I'm Emily Weiner, and I started a company called The Connectors. And I founded this business because I genuinely believe that people can cultivate better skills and competencies and abilities in themselves to better connect to the things they need, whether that's connecting to other people, connecting to new ideas, connecting to different resources, and all of that can help them unlock innovation and impact and all sorts of things in their lives. And so often we run through life engaging in just a bunch of transactions, and I'm here to actually help people cultivate that, go deeper, dig into that true connection so that beautiful things can happen.
And Emily and I met in 2020 when I started business school. I was frustrated in my first few months of business school. I felt like I wasn't being understood. I felt like people thought I was in the wrong place. Like professors were like, "You sure you should have not gone to law school? You sure this is what you're supposed to do? You sure?" It was, instead of being like, "Oh, let me help you or talk through with you," and then it was a professor who said, "Hey, I think you should look up the Social Innovation Center. They take people like you." And I was like, "What does that mean?" They're like, people who care about social impact. Go to the office hours and figure it out. And so I signed up for the office hours, and Emily's face came on the screen, and she listened to me, and it was the first moment where I felt like, okay, I didn't make a mistake by coming to business school to understand racism, to understand how to be a better educator, to understand the world a little better at this stage in my life. And Emily was very clear about that.
Wow. Thank you for that. Wow, that's transformative. And I will tell you a bit of the even further backstory behind that story. So I actually met you during your orientation. We had these group Zoom things, and it wasn't Zoom, it was some other platform. But you were on the screen in a bubble with a bunch of other different little people in a bubble. And I'm sitting at my dining room table like we all were in 2020. And I'll be honest, a lot of MBAs that pop on, they invite me to do those orientations. And a lot of I love connecting to anyone, no matter who it is. And thank you for honoring me with that story of seeing you for who you are, because that is what I aim to do with every single human in this life. And you are the most extraordinary, beautiful human. So we were on that orientation, and a bunch of people are coming on. Oh, tell me about the Social Innovation Lab and the Lewis Institute. Tell me about the programs and services you offer.
Mm-hmm.
And you came on, and I opened with a bunch of other people. It wasn't just you, but there were a bunch of people. And I said, well, why did you come to business school? What made you decide to come and get your MBA? And it was flipping the switch a little bit, because everybody assumed I would get on and just talk about, oh, this is who we are, and give my credentials. And look at all these things we have to offer you, and you made the right choice. And my approach in that was to say, okay, I need to know who you are so that I can connect you to the right resources, because maybe I'm the right resource for you, but maybe I'm not. And that's okay. I don't need to be the right resource for every single person. But I might say, oh, you know what? You want to talk to my friends over in the finance department, or you want to talk to my friends wherever. And that way I could just help guide people. I didn't see myself as there just to focus on social innovation and social impact, but to welcome people. We're a community, and we're all here to support each other, and let's get out of our silos and our lanes. And so you came on that screen, and I'm not blowing smoke. Like, you were, the moment you started talking, I thought, oh, she's a real one. She's, let's be real. Some people go and get their MBA and they're wonderful, but they're very linear about it, and they're very concrete, and it's a stepping stone because it will help them make more money in their company or whatever, for whatever reason they're there for. And I don't begrudge that. That's great. I can't help those people as much. You came on talking about so much of your why and who you were. And I thought, I need to get to know this woman. She's a real one. Like, this is someone, not from a perspective of, I think I can help her, from a perspective of, I think I want to learn from her. And so that was even before you came to office hours and you jumped on the screen, and then you and I had that most fantastic first conversation, which then turned into almost weekly conversations, which were wonderful. But in that moment, I had an instant connection to you because of how you showed up as your real, true, authentic self in explaining your purpose and explaining what you were seeking to get out of this experience. And I thought, wow, not only can I help her, I really want to get to know her.
That is so kind. Thank you.
I just love you.
Emily, thinking about your business that you're starting now, that you're running, but before getting into the world of connecting, could you explain, do you feel like you had moments in your life where you thought, yeah, I'm eventually going to be this connector, or was this a new world for you, like based on the things that you've done in your past?
Wow, that's a really great question. And I will try to make the answer as short as I can. So the short answer is, what I am doing right now is the culmination of every single thing I have done leading up to this very moment in time. This is inherently who I am. This is inherently what I do. But I do feel like my experiences, not just professional experiences. A lot of times we think about, when we're building businesses, what are my professional experiences that allow me to get here? But also my personal experiences that have allowed me, and growing up and all of these things. But if I look backwards, which is always so much easier to do when you're looking backwards than looking forward sometimes, I see the logic, I see the story, and I see that it started for me absolutely in childhood. And so there's some beautiful work by Marshall Gans. I don't know if you know his work about the story of self, the story of us, and the story of now. And I went through that exercise with my team a while ago. And in doing the story of self, I realized this has been my calling from childhood. So my childhood, frequently when I talk about that, I say, I attended 6 different schools in 9 years across 3 states. my life as a kid was in constant transition, in constant change, in constant upheaval. And when that happens, you can handle that in a lot of different ways. But as young as 5 years old, I was entering new environments and learning to have to integrate in those new environments quickly. And when I did that, I realized I forged connections with people. Now, my 5-year-old self wouldn't use that language, of course, but that's what I did. I looked around me, I saw what other people were doing, and I developed what Robert Putnam would call bridging social capital. I found a way to bridge across to other people who didn't have the same life that I did, who maybe didn't look like me, who spoke different languages than I did at home, or whatever they were, whatever environment I was in, I learned, oh, that's what you do on the playground? Cool, I'm going to play that game too. And then every single time I had to jump into a new situation, I found myself cultivating community really quickly. And it was because I understood inherently that no matter who that person was, I could probably find a way for some commonality to connect with them. And a way for us, when you're a kid, you just want to cultivate a group of friends. So for me, it was, I always had friends every step of the way. And I always found myself integrating into a group. A lot of people might go the other way and just become isolated and alone. That was never the environment I wanted to cultivate for myself. I always wanted to be surrounded by people who are vibrant or interesting, or I could just have fun with, or I could learn from, whatever that is. Every single step of the way, I have been a curator of community, and I found myself being the one to pull people together. So if I look back, some of this, you can have the argument of nature versus nurture. And is some of this inherently in my nature? Probably, right? There's probably some truth to that. This is just the way my brain is wired. But I do think that my circumstances, even in early childhood, led me to this moment where I am someone that wants to connect to other people. That's always been me. And I am someone who wants other people to feel that they can connect and feel good about that connection and cultivating that community. So I started to realize that is my superpower. And it's one of the things that you and I, it's the foundation of even that beginning story that you just told. Very quickly, we formed a connection with each other. And then we used that to build that trust with each other, for you to understand what I could do. I was able to help you connect to other resources or ideas, or we just talk about ways to shift our mindsets. Whatever it was that we were working on, we cultivated that trusting and trustworthy connection that allowed us to dig deep and allowed us to become better ourselves and better each other. And so when I started to think about what I wanted to do next, I thought, you know what? This is literally what I've been doing. If I look at my career trajectory, and if you looked at my LinkedIn or CV or whatever, you would be like, hey, that's a really weird career path, right? I've taken a lot of twists and turns along the way. I was a corporate event producer. I ran a PR firm. I've done a lot of different things. I've worked in almost every sector. But in every step of the way, what I have done is helped people connect to the things that they needed to connect to take their next step. Whether that's a sales meeting and teaching people something, whether that's in social innovation and helping people understand how to transform social issues, whatever it is, every step of the way, my job has been helping people to metabolize what they need to metabolize so they can then go out and do what they need to do and connect to the right people and resources to do it. So as I thought about it, I thought, well, this is my life's work. Why wouldn't I start a company called The Connectors?
Where we share stories in the chair.
Look, it's my commercial. We will be right back.
It's more than just a bad hair day. It's a journey. Finding the right hairstyle isn't easy, nor is finding the right stylist or the right products. Looking in every corner of the web gets messy, overwhelming, and exhausting. All the ads, the articles, the products, the videos, it shouldn't be this hard, but it is. And now, it isn't. The Chair. A black and brown centered platform where you can design hair boards, connect to hairstylists, and share hair care tips for a new, joyful path on your hair journey. Avoid the clutter, save yourself hours, months, and even years of research and poor trial and error. Everything you need and only what you need is in one place. Hair boards made by people like you, for you. Find the right products, the right people, the right answers for you, stress-free. Join the Chair community and make every day a great hair day. When you share your pain, you allow others to help you. And when you share your success, you help others get theirs. Lean on the Chair. We got you. No stress, no strife. In the chair. The chair. The chair. All right.
Thinking about this idea of community, I also want to interweave that with identity.
Yeah.
You identify as white, and I'm curious to know, do you have a story where you were building community and you were starting to understand what whiteness looked like to you?
Yeah, I think so. You know, part of my upbringing, I grew up in pretty dense urban areas. And dense urban areas tend to be more diverse, just inherently. And so I grew up in New York City, Miami. There's a lot of people that don't look like me in both of those places. And in fact, my I attended I attended 3 different schools during the time I was in Florida. And in one of those schools, I was the only kid in my class who did not speak Spanish at home. And I was the only Jewish kid in my entire school. Florida has since changed dramatically in terms of demographics, but this is, you know, the early 80s. So it was a very different time. And it really sort of didn't occur to me that I was different. I mean, I sort of knew, okay, they say some words that I don't always understand, and I wish it made my Spanish better, but it just didn't. It's just not how my brain works. And so, you know, then I shifted back to New York City, and while the community around me was extremely diverse, where I was living in Manhattan, the school I went to, because I had been through a lot of transition, my parents thought it might be good to not immediately going into middle school dump me into a public school system, because they thought that just might, when moving from Florida to New York, an entirely new environment, I'd gone through a lot of transition. So they thought what was in my best interest was to go to a private school, at least for 1 year, just to understand New York City, to get, you know, because I really hadn't lived in New York since I was in preschool. And so I thought, well, okay, you know, what do I know? So I went to this school that had a handful of people of color, but it was majority wealthy white kids. And I went to school with some like off the charts wealthy white kids. It was, and we were not wealthy by any stretch of the imagination. There was financial aid involved in this private school. And so there was just this dramatic difference for me where it suddenly felt like I felt alienated. I felt isolated in that school, and I felt like I was the other. which is bizarre because I looked exactly like them. And on every identity quality, we should have been the same. So when most people think about identity, they think, oh, and I think that's really the first time, I was 11 years old, that I understood whiteness and difference, and really started to understand that I missed having other people around me that didn't look like me. And because I didn't have that in my classes, most of my classes were all upper middle class or beyond that, way upper. They were the one percenters, some of them. And I couldn't connect with them because they didn't care about anything I cared about. The stuff that they cared about was too superficial for me. And it just didn't feel, with a couple of exceptions. There are always exceptions to that rule. One of the wealthiest people I ever connected with, you would have never known, she wore ripped jeans every day. She hated showering. She was your typical 11-year-old girl that didn't want to grow up kind of thing. I think she's a very high-powered real estate agent now, but she was real. And so I could connect with her. But that year, I couldn't get out of that school fast enough because I was missing the ability to connect. When you connect with people that are always the same, it's kind of boring. It's just not fun. And so that next year, we moved over the bridge to New Jersey, just over the bridge. And I moved to a town that was 45%. My high school was 45% Korean and Japanese. And that felt better. It just felt more community-based. It was still very largely missing a lot of other ethnicities, but at least I started to feel like I could go over to my friend Nancy's house and her mom would make us real Korean food, and I got that experience again. And I feel like that 7th grade experience for me of really understanding whiteness and not necessarily feeling great about it. The feeling that I didn't love this idea of just whiteness. And that's kind of how it felt. It felt like a lot of just whiteness. And again, I'm looking back, I can use that language now. I don't know that my 11-year-old self would have used that same language, but I feel like in that moment, I just felt like something was wrong or something was off or something felt too. And then I've now had a lot of experiences since that time in school where I had one just a couple of weeks ago. We were visiting Providence, Rhode Island, and Providence is a fabulous city and having an amazing time. And we took the ferry over to Bristol because it's another cute little town, and it was 4th of July, and they were having the parade. And I thought, okay, this is interesting. And it was great. It was a lovely time. But we got walking around Bristol, my boyfriend and I both looked around and we said, where are all the people of color? Like, why is everybody here sort of very, it just felt, and then it didn't help that they had a MAGA rally, and that was the end for us. But and we left. But I do absolutely recognize that because I've always grown up in these environments that are more diverse, that my neighbor would be Indian, or my across the street person would be Japanese, or down the block is an African American person, or whatever. Like that was my normal. Was that we all had different identities, and that was cool because we could learn from each other.
Oh, and if you're interested to learn more about my experiences as a Black woman and educator in Guangzhou, China, I wrote my first ebook titled Nowhere and Everywhere, Captured Emotions of a Beautifully Broken Love Story. It is on lulu.com. Take a read and see some beautiful photography of mine. Enjoy the rest of the show. I was having a conversation with Kelly Corrigan She has her podcast, Kelly Wonders. We were talking about whiteness and identity, and she talked about when she was in school and there was one black woman, and just because she was in her space, she started to recognize difference. And then when she was working in San Francisco, she was working in the hospitals with moms, and she talked about the Russian mom and she talked about the Hispanic mom, and she was like, everybody's there for the same reason, the same hurt, the same concern, the same stress. And for me, it was just an interesting thought to be like, what does growing up with difference look like? My godmother is a Dominican woman, right? Like I almost had a quince at the age of 15. For a long time, I was like, yes, this is a part of my identity. You know, as a kid, no one's gonna correct you until you get older. You're like, okay, relax. You know, and then thinking about how we have grown up, listened to soca, which comes from Trinidad and Tobago, really digging into Caribbean music, and so listening to reggae, but then also understanding what does it mean to be an African American, but what does that mean when you're black? And then when my mom was like, this is family, and now your Puerto Rican sister, your Dominican sister is now family. And so like for me, my normal, what other people would call diversity, was my normal. To be like, yeah, we had, where I lived growing up, we had one white family who lived up the street, and my mother would go to their house and she would bring us, and she would have Bible study with them at the kitchen table. And that was the thing that they did. When we go to their house, we're going to have Bible study, we'll talk to them and things like that, and being like, well, this is my life. Like, these are all these different families, and we had to walk to school every day, and so we have to pass the Vietnamese community, and we have to pass this, and you start learning. And when you like, one of my favorite things is walking down the street, and every block has a different smell from a different restaurant. Like every apartment window that's open is a different smell, so you know which family's cooking what. Like that.
I can't explain it, but there is and this is a specific New York City thing, but there is a specific smell to a bodega, and it is just, I smell it and I'm immediately transported back home to New York. It's like, I get that, but yes, those smells are such a part of your muscle memory. Yeah. I crave the bodega smell.
When you think about your identity and how difference and diversity is important to you, to just continue to learn from different people, how do you cultivate that in your definition of community for yourself and for your business?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think for me, intentionality is a really important part of what I do. So I try my best, and we don't always get everything right, but I try my best to make sure that as I'm cultivating, I understand the motivation or the inherent reasons for doing something, or I understand where that person is coming from. And that could be, identity is complex, right? Identity can mean a lot of different things. It's not just where you grew up, or, I'm white, you're black, or whatever it could be. We identify and we flex different parts of our identity depending on the situation we're in, right? I may not lead with, I very infrequently lead with the fact that I'm a Jewish person, except every now and then in certain circumstances, there's people will inherently understand when I say, look, I got a Jewish mother too, and then people understand, like, oh, okay, yeah, you understand the neuroses here, but that's never a big part of my identity. So when I'm looking to other people, I'm trying to understand what makes them who they are. What parts of their identity are they presenting right now? And are there ways that I can ask open-ended questions to learn more about that. And so I was just having a conversation with another former Babson student who worked for me for years, extraordinary woman, Native American, really such a very different way of thinking about the world than anything that I would have grown up with or known. And really how she talks about Mother Earth. She's currently on a reservation in South Dakota, but she lives mostly in New Mexico and is building a lot of different things for her life. And as we get into conversations, I'll just ask more about things that she'll bring up, and then that will inherently lead her to say, oh, well, in my culture, this is what we, we're taught, or this is how we interpret, or this is what whales mean for us as a symbol, or whatever it, we were just talking about whales. But what I try to do in cultivating and curating that intentionality is not just ask questions about what's being presented to me on the surface, but trying to dig a little bit deeper and say, okay, so what got you into that? Or how do you think about that? Or even just a comment, that's really interesting. I never thought of something that way. Why do you think of it that way? Asking some of those next level questions frequently helps you get into that deeper level of conversation. And once you get there, and there's an important distinction. I read a sort of typical business management book by a former Navy, whatever he was, admiral or whatever, and very powerful guy controlling, warships and all sorts of stuff. And he wrote this book called Turn the Ship Around. And he talks about how he shifted everyone in the ship from being a leader-follower model to a leader-leader model, and how do you actually cultivate leaders. It's actually a wonderful book. It's a little old, but really a wonderful book. A little business jargony. It's good. And one of the things he talks about in that book, and I realized, oh, that's what I do. Are you asking a question to get the answer, or are you asking to understand? And I think that's a really important thing when you're engaging in conversation and curating community and cultivating trust, is to constantly convey that I'm just seeking to understand here. I know you have some questions for me, but this conversation is going to go wherever it's going to go because it will inherently evolve and flow over time. You're not going to stick to your script, so to speak. And that's the same when I'm cultivating community, when I'm helping other people cultivate these skills for themselves. A lot of times we ask questions because we feel like we need to know the answers to those questions in order to be able to get our job done. Take a breath, right? Sometimes you just need to wallow around in the information that you're being given before you can form an answer back. And that's the other thing too. A lot of people ask questions to get answers so they can then answer back. Sometimes I can just answer back and say, wow, that's really cool. And I never thought about it that way. And I'm going to mull on that. I'm going to see how I might be able to bring that into my life in some capacity. And I've brought in some of the practices and beliefs and ways that my friend who's Native American operates in her life. But obviously not everything she does, because we're different people. But she's helped me think about my own perspective in life differently. And so I think that's a big part of curating community, is asking the right questions, asking for the right reasons, and showing up with your authentic self, wanting to engage in something so that everybody can grow and everybody can learn. It's not just about me getting my needs met.
Well, Emily, thank you so much for sharing your stories in the chair. I truly, truly appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me. This was the most fun. I treasure you. Thank you for inviting me into the chair. I feel very honored and very special. And you can't see this, but I'm sitting up a little straighter now. And thank you, because I always so value and treasure the opportunity to have a conversation with you. So thank you for being you.
Welcome to the chair, where Miss Dream
Thank you for listening to an episode of The Chair. I, of course, would love your continued support. Let me know what you think of this episode by doing all the things. Subscribe, comment, and come back next week, every week. Enjoy the rest of your beautiful day. Or if you are like me, enjoy that moonlight and that one star under all your city lights. Love you. Talk to you later.
The chair.
How long I gotta wait for a press record?
Go.
We support her. Shit.
Do your...
Welcome to the chair, where Miss Dream always has